Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome for being here, even in this rainy day. Welcome to the FutureEdu conference. We will invite the first foreign guest, John Moravec, who will present his own study that was prepared for today's conference. It will sum up the knowledge of experts, and it will be the stepping stone for the future debate on development of education. So first, let's welcome the independent consultant, John Moravec.
I think I was trying to figure out how long I can hide in the back there, so it's really nice to be back in Prague. My first time here was 30 years ago. It was a very interesting experience because I got to experience the education system in the very old paradigm, but in a moment was starting to transform towards something quite new. And now we're at a period where I think we're seeing many pressures to develop towards something even more future relevant as well. We performed, to get a global sense, we performed a meta-analysis of recent academic literature. So we looked at 1,155 peer-reviewed academic articles, and these were published between January 1st and June 5th, January 1st, 2020 and June 5th, 2022, so almost 2.5 years. We looked in the areas of disruptive technologies, and through the academic databases of the World of Science, of Scopus. And then we performed a network analysis to kind of look at, so what are the key trends, using keywords, but also using the key trends between the articles. And then we dove in deeper to really try to get a sense of what's going on. So, muy názor. None of this is new, okay? This is a reflection of the academic literature. When we did, from the scope of the research, we went in, see what are academics writing about? What are the top thinkers in peer-reviewed journals? What are they publishing? None of this is really mind-blowing. Now, it's important to look at it in a different way, though, because we have these changes, we know they're occurring, we know more are coming, but our educational policies do not reflect any of this. And this is where I think we have a huge disconnect. Our educational policies need rapid updating to be relevant within digital age, within disruptive, with more disruptions coming our way. Because we could talk about blockchain, Industry 4.0, and everybody be really bored because, yeah, you just read it online this morning or sharing memes and stuff, but this is all science fiction for policymakers. So our task today and going forward is to think about how we make this stuff real into actionable policies that help ensure education remains successful. So to close out, I'm going to share 4 scenarios that we put together. So the first one is that we don't do anything, right? And so we call it missing the boat. The boat's already gone. And so we wrote that failing to adapt to change creates the risk that schools 1.0 to find relevance in a 4.0 society. I mean, 1.0 schools can't teach 4.0 kids, right? They'll find fewer and fewer opportunities to connect with students, communities, and stakeholders that have adopted to new technological realities. Right? If we don't do anything, education is just absolutely irrelevant. The second one we have is late arrival, right? Where we're always trying to catch up. And in my mind, I think this is kind of where we are now, how things have been, that we're aware of changes, but we're not leading the conversation. We're not leading the adoption. So we wrote that without policies to guide efforts, leadership around adapting, or leading school transformation in an era dominated by disruptive technological innovations, sustainability of school responses are absent. In effect, schools continuously watch the world change around them and wonder, gosh, what should we do next? Third scenario, just on time, right? We can do it, right? This is about proaction on part of the school systems. that helps to set policies that enable engagement with various sectors of society, especially as technological innovators, right? You got schools that are connecting, they're part of the conversation. And while schools are thought of consumers, their outputs, otherwise known as graduates, they're generally well prepared to participate in a technologically advanced society, right? And then we've got the fourth one, right? The last one is about being proactive. The next one's being preactive. Pre-action means that we know that kids entering school now won't be able to work at Škoda when they graduate, right? Preactive school systems engage in the purposive development of the digital transformation they desire. And so they take an anticipatory approach. That is, the schools themselves start to act like futurists, right? And really prepare for different mindsets, for being able to adapt to new realities, but also identifying out prospective technologies and trends that will emerge so we know how to adapt our thinking and our training to help also impact the development of a broader socioeconomic system.
Well, I want to thank John for his work. It was an academic survey, an economic study, which gives us an insight to our view of technologies in education. The second phase depends on all of us who care for education and who participated in both.
Děkuji, já budu velmi stručný.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief and I'll do something that speakers should do. Just raise 3 points that I want to mention. And really what I want to do is to thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming. I want to thank the organizers, Bob and his team at the Prague Innovation Institute, Opero, all the other partners who were involved in the organization of this conference. And because we have the brain trust of education in the Czech Republic here, and perhaps for all of Central Europe, the last time we met here, we talked about how the COVID crisis managed to give a boost of energy to the Czech educational system. And you can see this in the data. Suddenly, Czech teachers started working with tools that they never really used before. And now it's there, it's something they use every day. So there is an upcoming crisis. The other thing I want to say, what I noticed, unfortunately, is that in these panels we still have a gender imbalance here, and I want to invite you to another event that takes place today in the Prague Innovation Institute and the Innovation Center in the Institute, which is the next edition of the Prague Innovation Mixer, which is from 5 o'clock, I think, at the Škoda Palace. And there we'll talk about the position of women in the academia. So I want to invite you there. But first of all, most importantly, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Bob, I thank the organizers, and I am convinced that great ideas that Bob brought to the table will continue to percolate here in the next years, and that we'll see each other again in 2023. Thank you very much and enjoy the conference.
What is your personal or academical stance? What do you think about the John study, and what is your opinion about the technologies in education or education going on forward on technologies? Please, Claire, you are the first who can answer.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and Alexis was so nice to translate a bit of the discussion beforehand to me. And a very important remark that I would like to make is that we should always consider what actually is the purpose of education, because the risk is there that we talk all day about all these technologies, and we start almost to see technology innovation as a purpose, as a goal in itself. But I hope we can reflect, all of us, also here in the audience, and I unfortunately can't see you, but please reflect yourself on what should be the purpose of education. and everything we do, technology, no technology, should be actually fulfilling that purpose.
I think that the real optimistic thing is that we have a chance to come together as a community and communities to discuss these things and also bring forth ideas and policy ideas that could be practically implemented. How do we empower teachers? How do we adjust funding formulas? Do we want to? How do we want to adjust the maturita? How do we integrate Plan 2030? Do we want to force kids to decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives when they're 13 years old? We could start discussing these things and start pushing forward some policy ideas.
But the steps to take are clear. More education, better education, more equal education. So that we do not fall short of the requirements of the future and so that we do not waste individual talent. The challenge, of course, is that the economic resources available for the public sector have been scarce for a long time, and the situation does not seem to be getting easier. In Finland, we patiently increased our investments in education for a very long time. Between the 1960s and the early 1990s, we rose from international mediocrity to having the young adults with the highest educational achievement in the OECD. But that rising path of investment came to an end during the depression of the 1990s. Since then, the investment in education has been on a slowly declining path, which is partially responsible for the long stagnation of our education level to levels below the OECD average. Now, the mood has changed, and there is increasing national recognition of the growing need for more education.
But some of the threats may be hidden. So my question is, what do you see as threats? More or less visible threats of the interconnection of physical and digital living. And we should put focus on children, because these children were born in this world and they see the digital world as something natural. And adults are sometimes not able to teach their children how to navigate in the digital world. So let's start with ex-Google, Daniel. This was also my role in Google. I was charged with creating educational communities. I am co-founder of a Global Educator Group. We were a punk team, a non-profit team within corporate. We were a technology group, but what we did is to prevent dehumanization through technology. I think technology can give us the opportunity, the possibility to be human. My kid is great in communicating while playing PUBG or other games. I think he's even better in communicating. But then his GP tells me that his backbone is crooked. So the threat I see here is the dehumanization. Ashka, what about you? The first thing that comes to my mind is that technologies bring many illusions which in reality are a hidden threat. One of them is anonymity. In internet debates, everybody feels that they are anonymous thanks to their hidden identity. However, this anonymity is illusionary. It's an illusion because we leave some traces. And a lot of people don't see this, don't see through this, that each and every action have an impact in the real world. Second thing is the misunderstanding that we see here. Currently, you are at a stage where technologies are a natural part of children's lives. However, for our generation, these technologies only came about later, and we are unable to understand that these technologies are something very natural for the children, because we're unable to see technologies through the children's eyes, and we are being overprotective. And that's why there is tension and misunderstanding among generations due to this.
And now I have Michal Šebek from the Czech University of Technology talking about the vision. I'm here to talk about how do we educate for the digital era and so on. The trouble is that I don't think we should. None of the organizers fainted, that's good. But it's not because I'm too old-fashioned, no, quite the opposite. That's not enough. Why should we educate for Industry 4.0 and not 6.0 or 10.0? I think that we should educate for the future. Because children, students will live mainly in the future. And what I just said is either completely trivial, and everyone knows that, or it's, wow, a profound, life-changing piece of knowledge, or it's a lie, and we should suppress it. So which do you think? Well, depending on the position of our society, it seems to be that the last is true. It's a lie, because what are the arguments concerning education? Some people say, well, back when I went to school, or I never needed this or that, and it was useless learning that, or, and that's not much better, companies today need X, Y, Z, we need more drivers. Yesterday it was miners. We really should be careful about that. We should not start listening to companies when we deal with education, because their specific needs. Don't they realize that education takes years? 10 or 20 years? Like, who cares that you don't have drivers today? If you change the curriculum, the first drivers you get are in 20 years, and there won't be any drivers in 20 years. And that's not a joke. It's not so long ago that mining was introduced as an education program with huge support from companies. And even before they finished studying, we closed all the mines. But the organizers, I think, meant it well when they invited me. Let's teach at least for 4.0. And not for Empress Maria Theresa from the 18th century. That's probably what they meant, okay? These are my grandchildren. Unless something unexpected happens, they will probably be alive in the year 2100. And I really want us to give them an education that will last for that long, to make them protected, future-proof them for whatever happens.
Because they are all humanities guys. So I will let them get to future. What about Luboš? Yes, I agree 100%. I just want to add a few things. Education 1, 2, 3, 4. It has been already described. What you have described is education 3.0. And also there are definitions for education 4.0. If there is someone who thinks that the situation that we have now is okay, they will not be able to prepare for the future. But however, I want to say another thing. I have the impression that we will lose our humanity if we are able to plug a cable into our head and download what the others have learned and upload what we have learned. This is a vision of knowledge economy where people will be able to share their know-how. Did you see the few episodes of Black Mirror where they use this context? This could also be in Star Trek, in 7 of 9. You could see it in the past. I don't know if Star Trek should be an inspiration for us. Yes, I don't think so. What about you, Sarah? I think you were great speaking about this. During COVID, I participated in many conferences on education. And at these conferences, people usually agree that it's necessary, then they have some refreshment, and then they go home. But you mentioned that now we have technology, but we need to know how to implement them. That's a completely different question. And another thing is children memorizing things. That's a completely different question. I also come from the humanities background. And now we mentioned the cables plugging into our heads. We don't have a lack of technology or information, but the problem is synthesis of this information. Children need to be able to compare data from different environments and to create their own image, not only based on the idea of school, but how the students themselves are able to synthesize. This is the basis for the future. We know that the future will be chaotic, and we will need to be able to navigate through this, and everyone will use different tools. So the liberty of which tools we choose and which information we draw upon, this will be essential. So what would you say to defend yourself, Mikhail? I don't want to apologize to all the humanities guys, but if you only could hear what my colleagues from Technical University think about art, you would be appalled. I think this only shows how harmful specialization in STEM or in humanities is, well, how harmful it is. So now we need specialized educators.
Entertaining discussion. Before I say goodbye, I want to thank the organizers, which is Opera, the Prague Innovation Institute, the National Pedagogy Institute, and Aspen Institute. So 3 institutes. The main partners were Prague, T-Mobile, and the Česká spořitelná Foundation. The partners Lenovo, Czech Prague British International School, bakaláři, Smíchovská střední, Průmyslová škola a gymnázium. The main media partner, Hospodářské noviny, Media Partners, Řízení školy and Pressloviny. Conference was organized in collaboration with Učitel naživo, Edu Změna, Česko Digital, Red Button Edu, and Global Teacher Prize. And now it's up to Bob to give us a summary. I'm sure he's full of bursting with impressions from all the panels, all the keynote speeches, but 2 or 3 key learnings, headlines, newspaper headlines. What do you have? What's the conclusion of today? I'll start with the last thing we've heard. We have everything. That was nicely said. We have all the tools. We don't know how to use them. We have a digital infrastructure, which is enough. I'm sure it could be improved. We have the resources to remove inequality. We have the resources to develop education very quickly where all of us here in this room want to have it, but we don't use these tools, these resources, and that's the main problem. So we need to learn to use resources. We need to find the confidence, the determination to use them. That's important. I also want to point out what Lee Anderson said. Investment in education is expensive. Of course it is. Look at the budget of education. It's the second largest chapter in the budget of the Czech Republic. But ignorance is so much more expensive, and this can be seen in so many parameters that you can measure. Look at the countries that have clearly more developed education system. They are almost always more satisfied and have a stronger democracy. That's also very important. And finally, I want to come back to the very first international panel when we talked about, and in the next panels as well, we talked about the need for confidence, trust, optimism. And it's not just trust in the teachers and that they're able to change. We need to share the optimism with the young generation, which is what I want to call for here. If surveys tell us that the current adult generation doesn't think that the future will be better, well, we can't expect that in an atmosphere like this, the future, the upcoming generation, will hope for a better world. This belief, this faith in the future is so much important. If you look at all the doom and gloom around us, if you look at all the richness of technology, what you need is faith, the hope for the future. the hope that we will prosper, that we can profit in various senses of the word. And that is important, because once we lose that, there is no future. There is no future, and you can't expect any meaningful vision. And do we have something we want from the next year of this conference? Let's say 1 year from now, when we meet here again, what can we do so we'll be satisfied? I actually was thinking about this. I do hope there will be a next year. This is not just up to us, it's also up to whether we'll able to find such a broad spectrum of partners, because it really is great that we've been able to join forces like this. That's one thing. The first important factor, whether we manage to keep that, and I hope we can. And if we have another conference, we should or could perhaps direct it more towards the kind of provocation that Mikhail did here, because that's exactly what he said. The most important thing is that you need a creative conflict, which is not about arguing with the other person, but to stimulate the imagination. Maria said this, I think, that our imagination is not enough. Maria Hermanova, the digital anthropologist. And if it's not enough, if our imagination is not enough, we need to stimulate it. We need to give it the impulse to move forward. And that's important. That's an important factor. Another important factor is to come with specific projects, such as Marv's school and other projects that could help, could provide inspiration on how to develop education, how to develop it further, while also being in touch with the representatives of the institutions whose job it is, and to tell them, look, here it is. Here are your good practice examples. So what have you done? What have you done to systemize and replicate these good practice examples? So again, let's put this together, create an amalgamation where we say specific things to people who can spread it throughout the system. Thank you very much for the summary, Bob. Thank you very much on behalf of the organizers. I want to thank Eva Shalkova, who was in charge of the whole thing. I thank every one of you for listening, including those who were watching us online. And those of us watching us online, well, I feel sorry for you, because those people who are here will now have a glass of wine and a small refreshment. So perhaps next time come in person to enjoy that as well. It's been an honor. Thank you very much for coming. And our thanks to Mikhail Rusipal for being the host.